All right, we got our guts back from the parts washer. Everything came out looking really, really nice. Super happy with the condition of everything that was inside this gearbox. So next thing I'm going to get up to is taking our ring gear and installing it on the limited slip differential. Also, one kind of comical thing I noted, one of the few parts that still has a 02A part number is the pinion bearing plate. So just kind of funny to me that all the way here from production date of 2018, there's still a 02A part number that's in use inside of these gearboxes. So let's get these out of the way for now. Got our Wavetrac here. The parts are still warm from the parts washer too, which is hopefully going to help me with getting the ring gear installed on the differential. Wavetrac recommendations. So there is a gear oil that I really love using in these gearboxes. It is Redline's Shockproof. At least I like to use it in blend with other gear oils like MTLV or Volkswagen's OEM gear oil. Unfortunately, Wavetrac specifically says on this document, as soon as you open one of these up, to not use Redline Shockproof. So I suppose it the main issue may be just the kind of wave part that's in the middle of these differentials that's supposed to transmit some power to the wheel that has absolute zero traction. It's kind of the extra thing above and beyond the torsion, helical cut gear setup that is inside of these differentials, just to, it's supposed to give it that little bit extra ability, I suppose. So here's our differential. This is a 02JB differential. So really there's only 3 different differentials they sell for the MQ250s. They have a 02A differential, which is identical to the plain 02J one, except it just doesn't have bolt holes drilled for the 02J style flanges, because the early 02As, they just have press fit flanges. So that's the main difference between those and the later, in the early 02J version. They use the same size ring gear, or at least the internal diameter is the same on 02A and most of the 02Js. As you get to the late 02Js, starting around 2004, the internal diameter of the ring gear changes, and that necessitated Wavetrac and anybody else like Pelican to make this 02JB differential. All of the 0A4s and 02Ss, they are going to take the 02JB. The other thing is the rivets that hold in the ring gear to the original differential. They're actually, I think, 1 millimeter larger diameter than what the original 02A and early 02J uses. So normally Volkswagen does actually offer hardware for those 02As and most of the 02Js where you press in studs into a replacement differential, or for a replacement ring gear, whatever the case may be. And then they have little kind of torque plates and nuts that would secure the ring gear and go on the other side. But Volkswagen did not make any such hardware kit for these later 02Js that have all these holes are drilled a millimeter larger. So those studs don't press fit, they don't stay secure in here. And there seems to be no solution for trying to secure one of these ring gears to a different OEM Volkswagen differential assembly. So all of these aftermarket limited slip differential guys, instead of making their own similar press fit hardware, they just decided, okay, well, we'll use bigger bolts, but we're just going to drill and thread the bolt holes on our differential rather than having the press fit studs. So they're just going to use simple bolts. They're going to go right through and hold the ring gear onto the differential. Speaking of, I'll probably have to go back and look at what the torque specs are. I don't know if they put that on this one or not. I forgot. They have a little bit different torque spec on these. I'll probably have to look it up on Wavetrac's website when I go to do the final torquing on these things. But for now, let's just get the ring gear on there and at least get the bolts started. So this is actually still kind of cold. It's only, a little above 50 degrees in here. This has started to cool down, but it still has some heat to it. And definitely having the ring gear significantly warmer, then the differential is going to help in getting this to press on here. It is press fit. It's very, very snug. So I might actually go ahead and put my heat gun to this, give it a little bit more heat, and try and help this out some. Make this as easy as possible. It's still, they almost never go on right away exactly perfect, so you oftentimes end up having to have a little additional extra force to get it on there, whether it be by a soft face dead blow hammer like that to at least help it a little bit, and then maybe using the bolts to get it on there the rest of the way. And while we're waiting, you can see, I'm going to take this bolt back out. So this was kind of an unexpected change to me that I showed you in the previous video, where it seems like they didn't machine away quite as much on the differential on these 02Ss. So the Mark IV Speedo gear, even though these flats are here for this part of the Speedo gear to engage with, they didn't machine out enough of this to actually make the gear fit. And then you can see on the 02JB, the Speedo gear goes right on there, and it's supposed to have that little bit of play to it. That's perfectly normal. Then you're going to press the bearing right over the top of that. So it may end up being anybody doing this swap. Maybe the easiest thing really is to also do a limited slip differential swap as well. And certainly if you ever have to replace any later 02J or 0A4 differential, they're going to not have any hardware anyway. So if you end up needing to replace this assembly, you basically just say the only real option is to buy a limited slip anyway that use these bolts, because there isn't any actual hardware out there that exists to secure the ring gear back to a replacement OEM differential. I guess older 02A, 02J guys, they're lucky that they do have available parts that would actually allow them to swap differentials like that. Oop. So what I may have to do for now is also get a couple of these bolts just started, and then I'll have to take them back out because I will need to add Loctite to them. There, you know what? This table kind of absorbs too much. I might just put one of these blocks on the ground and then do this. There we go. That's a promising sound, actually. We got some pretty good movement. Okay, that actually went on there all the way without even having to use the bolts, it looks like. So I like that. I'm going to take these back out and apply Loctite to them. Then I'm actually going to use the press to act as a sort of vise to hold this thing in place while I torque the bolts. what I did kind of find a little funny, there's a little bit of an etching on this ring gear here. I don't know if you can see that. It just looks like a couple of numbers and an AF. I've never actually seen like hand-done etching on a ring gear from Volkswagen before. You know, this was a transmission that was not all that old, just, you know, probably manufactured sometime in 2018 or 2019 for a 2019 model year car. Had 50,000 miles on it. Yeah, definitely a little funny. Side note about trying to figure out what gear ratio any kind of a gear is, or set of gears I should say. You take the number of teeth, you count the number of teeth on your output gear first, take that number, divide it by the number of teeth you count on your input gear. So in this case, on the differential, your final drive ratio is going to be whatever the number of teeth is on your ring gear divided by the number of teeth on the pinion gear. And in the case of this differential, it's 61 teeth on the ring gear and 18 teeth on the pinion shaft gear, and that comes out to your 3.38 repeating, or 3.39, I like to round it up. Same ratio the Mark IV TDIs use, same ratio the VR6s use, at least the earlier 12 valves that have the 5-speed. When you get to the 24 valves, they all had 6 speeds at that point, the 02Ms. So I suppose if you really wanted a very long-legged VR6, the ratios in this transmission would also work really well. It's the same final drive. You're just got slightly taller fourth, a little bit taller fifth, and then the extra tall sixth gear. Actually work out pretty well if you just want a nice quiet cruiser but still have, you know, pretty decently spaced gearing for normal driving otherwise. Let me see, what size were these? 15s? 14s? Something like that? 12 points? No, I think it's a 14. Okay. So we get these run in. Let's try this guy. Not going to tighten them fully with the impact, but I just do want to make sure that things are seating all the way. It looked really good on initial inspection, and it doesn't feel like anything's moving any further, so I feel confident the ring gear has seated all the way. Okay, so take this over to the press. I'm gonna have to go back up on this. Want to go back up 2, or is this fine? I think this will be good enough. I'll double stack that. Put our diff on here. And this guy, it's actually the same one I would use for pressing on the bearing too. I'm just going to put a good bit of force on here to keep it in place so I can torque these bolts. Okay, now I need to go look up my torque specs. Alright, so we got our torque specs looked up. The Wavetrac website says for the 02JB, these bolts are torqued to 90 foot-pounds with the Loctite. So we got them Loctited, we got them on there. And make sure our diff is well secured. I have to put my foot on the dang press to keep it from turning. And a little bit more force there. There's 90. Alright. Probably have to go through and do all these individually in a circle just to make sure I get them all. Oh, that one's a pain to get to. Okay, let's go round robin now. Doesn't move. No more movement. Very good. All right, we're torqued. I'm gonna leave that set up there like that so we can get our bearings installed and the speedo gear. Always untorque your torque wrench before you put it away and leave it for a while. Always good practice. All right, so speedo gear on Mark IV and older, the only ones that use it. I just like to remember it as, when you're looking at the bottom, the angle of the teeth are going off to the right, going to the right and up. So make sure that's that way, put it on there. Let's grab our diff bearings. I actually have this whole kit that I bought for myself years ago, and it's been just sitting here waiting for me to finally build some goofy transmission for myself. And here we are. Back when I was still living in California, actually. eBay special, somewhere in the UK. Cascade German does have all of these parts. Good high quality stuff. So generally most of the bearings are either going to be, Schaeffler FAG or SKF. Well, this one has the later style seal too. Cool. I like it. We got NSK here. That's interesting. A little different. These are our diff bearings. Who makes these? SKF. Yeah, there you go. That'll work. A little bit different part number than I'm used to, but should do the job. So I had Oil Hammer on TDI Club comment to me about how many more diff bearing failures he sees on 0A4, Mark V and newer 5 speeds. First thing I noticed when I started doing these rebuilds regularly is Volkswagen had changed the preload specs on the Mark V and up transmissions. They only wanted 0.24 millimeter preload on the bearings instead of the 0.4 the older ones have. And then as I poke around the parts catalog, it turns out, oh hey, they're even using a different part number. So I don't know how well this is going to show up, but it does to me look like the earlier style bearing that I have here in my hand has a little bit more aggressive of an angle to the taper on these bearings. They're slightly more upright on the newer style ones, I think. They're not far off though, they're pretty close. But it does look like these are angled just a slightly more. And since I'm using the 02J case anyway, and I'm definitely using the older style bearings, I'm going to be using the older, higher preload as well, and should be a little stronger and hopefully last very, very long. Okay, so get our 2 bearings out. These are going to be the outer races that get pressed into the case, and these 2 bearings get pressed on the diff. So I did buy some Volkswagen press adapters years ago, figuring I would start doing more and more of these. You don't have to buy these, you just have to know some basic principles behind what you're doing. So when it comes to pressing on a bearing like this, you're looking to only put force just on the inner race. You don't want to put any force in the cage. This cage is flimsy and it will deform pretty easily. So all you're looking for is some kind of, you know, tubular steel of some kind that'll just go around the outside of whatever it is you're trying to press something onto. So if, in this case, you have this little lip that does stick up above the bearing. So you want to make sure your adapter is able to clear that, but you want to make sure it's only pressing on the inner race of the bearing and not touching the cage. So it does need to be pretty precisely sized to get that done right. Okay, get our other side done. There we go. So, differential done. What I'm probably going to do as well, I'll just, even though this is not at risk of having, you know, spider gears roll around and have the assembly fall apart on you easily, I still, while I'm dealing with assembly and disassembly of these transmissions, I still thread a bolt in here because it at least gives me a good place to grab onto that's not going to affect the bearing, not going to deform the cage by trying to grab onto that to get it in and out. Because especially when this goes into the case, you're not able to really get your hands around the ring gear to pull it up by the ring gear. So I just thread in a long M8 by 1.25 bolt, so then I can just grab that bolt to lift the whole differential assembly in and out. Just makes that a little bit easier. This guy is going to go on the shelf. I don't know, I suppose I could use it for any 0A4 really, if it comes down to it. Somebody needed it, but then at the same time, I can't, there's no hardware, you know what I mean? So maybe I just start throwing all of the 0A4 differentials out. I can at least scavenge the spider gears off of it, and the center pin. But since you really don't, there doesn't exist any hardware to actually reuse these, once you've gotten a ring gear separated from it, it's basically just scrap metal at this point. There's no reason to really hold on to it. But I don't feel like tearing it all apart right now, so it'll go on the shelf with my other differentials until I feel like actually taking it apart and then scrapping the rest of the housing the next time we need to do a scrap run. So differential done. The only thing I got left is I can press some bearings onto the input shaft. I actually need to still get a good bell housing. I think I'm gonna disassemble that very nasty looking 02J, use the housing off of that, and then that'll be it. I can't really do much more until I get my pinion shaft back from the machine shop, so let's call it a day.